So to set some expectations, well, first, I'm Gabriel. I'm a software engineer local to Las Vegas, and I work on a lot of apps for small businesses here. So as I said, I'm Gabriel. I'm a software engineer here in Las Vegas, usually making apps from scratch, working on both the design, the UX, and the implementation for businesses here. So the topic of AI building tools that usually handle the design to code process is something I'm pretty familiar with because I'm the natural intelligence taking care of it usually. Now, for this session, I have the chairs curved in so that hopefully we can make this a little bit more interactive and spark more of a discussion because this is kind of a hot topic. So my plan is just to set some context and then go through a lot of the services that we have available to us. Although when I made this, I actually kind of rearranged it while making it, so I'll just show you. So the context for this whole talk is that code is easier to produce than ever. And recently, when I went to a design convention actually, it seemed that half the vendors were interested in just making these design to code tools. How's it going? Howdy, come in. Would you mind closing the door actually? Yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that, man. That's a big deal.
Do you mind me asking, is Sin City? So Sin City programmers just a group here in Henderson that meets like outside of this, monthly event, or?
Right now, it's just a Tech Alley based meetup.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just here. I'd like to take it outside if we get a more consistent group going, but it really started less than a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question though. And that's actually one of my next things that I forgot to mention. If you do want to ask a question, don't wait till the end. Just ask it right away. Because I have a lot of demos loaded up that I can just start digging through right away.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so when I went to this convention, I found a whole lot of vendors focusing on this design to code aspect. And with Copilot and with Cursor as well, it kind of seems like hand coding everything is losing importance in a large scale, but I know a lot of people that think otherwise. And I personally, through my experience using these things, I know that I'm not going to be out of a job anytime soon because these things can't get everything right. Far, far, far from it. So one of the first ones I want to focus on is Builder.io, and it's because that's one of the first that came out. Right when ChatGPT became a thing, Builder.io came out a couple months after. And the idea was that you could import a Figma file and then tell it exactly what you want it to do, what should be reactive and what the business logic should be, and then they could make it. And that was like a year and a half or 2 years ago. And I tried using it and it was all right. And they also say that they're framework agnostic. They can do Vue and React and Svelte and all that stuff. And when I tried it out, they were having a little bit of difficulty implementing the reactive state. So I tried it again recently because when I talked to the vendors, they said it's completely different and now it's more focused on becoming a sustainable tool for a software development company. And they actually did not disappoint. So the first thing that I tried out was the Figma to code. So I was working on a project, a real project, and I thought, I'm not gonna manually code this whole page. Let me just try this out for the first time. So I put a Figma design, and it was for a client, so I don't want to display it. It was for a client, and I told it, hey, I'm using Vue, I'm using Nuxt UI, and I'm using Tailwind CSS. And I picked this out of a drop-down. It wasn't even a prompt. And unfortunately, I came up with this, and you don't have to read the whole thing, but it literally told me, I understand you want it built in Vue, but it's obviously in React. Now that's wild, because I didn't provide it any code whatsoever. So it's just totally dreamt up the fact that I provided code and that it was in React. And we had a whole lot of back and forth. And this isn't the only one. After trying to convince it again that I just provided it a design image and not any code. Hi, welcome. Happy to have you. So it thought really hard. This took like a minute and a half, and then it just gave up. And I mean, shucks, it was tragic. I really wanted to see it work. But there is good news. So later on, what I did is I came up with a design from scratch, actually with the host of the design meetup here, Valerie. And then I told it, all right, just use React, Tailwind, and use ChatCN instead. And when it's focusing on React, it actually does a whole lot better. So I'm not sure how real the framework agnostic part is, but when it focuses on what it's really good at, it really does excel. So, what's up?
When you were sharing the Figma, were you sharing a Figma link
So,
or a screenshot of the Figma?
the way this particular tool works, and this is very important because it contributes to the usability of the whole thing. So some apps have you just paste in a link. However, others have a lot going on here. Oh, no. Where's my Figma?
Plugin for Figma.
What's up?
So you're going to build a plugin for Figma?
They have a plugin for Figma.
Yeah.
Yes. So a lot of them have.
So it's probably looking at Figma that's built in React, saying that this is React code.
Or just straight up?
So you mean that Figma's built in React, and then it's just reading that?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's probably what it's like. It's looking at how React elements are constructed.
I see.
JSX tag there for it.
So it's like
That's literally what it said.
yeah.
That's literally what it said.
You are wrong.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
damn.
maybe if you pasted an image, it would have a different result. But if you're using their plugin, that's
Yeah, you're probably right, but when you read the documentation, that's the way it's supposed to work. I mean, regardless of the workflow that you're using. So I guess they could edit the documentation or just edit the platform to use normal Figma links. Because every other of the tools here, they use this. You go to copy, paste as, and you do link to selection. And it returns a URL that maps directly to this highlighted area. And that's used for chatbots with the Model Context Protocol, or it's used directly in the other tools like, Anima and one of the others that I'm going to go over today. So Builder is really unique in this way, but it seems like it might hold them back. But yeah, as I mentioned, when you do just ask it to do React, it does great. It does amazing. It doesn't get everything exactly the way it should be, but this is pretty far. And then when you do analyze the code, yeah, pretty good. So when you do analyze the code, I was pretty happy in that it has, well, one, it includes the not found, the error pages, but two, it does a pretty good job at splitting things into components and utilizing the UI library that I gave it. And this is just a quick little snippet that I took a picture of just to show that it created its own component and then it uses it later on. And the reason why I mentioned it is because it's in contrast to one of the other frameworks that I was working with. So I was pretty happy with this. Fantastic. Now, when it came to the VS Code extension, it actually gets even better because it turns your VS Code window into essentially a browser window with a chatbot that you can use to modify your app in a visual sense. So here what I'm showing is an interface where I could literally click and drag or click and modify the UI elements on the screen without changing the code myself. And at the same time, since it's VS Code, I could just totally go to the other tab and edit the code myself and have it reflected here too. So this part was pretty thrilling. And I could actually show it live if you're interested too. I just have it. Oh, this is cursor. No, I closed it. But I could totally pull it up. Now, the last feature that it has is building an app from scratch. And I just did this with a straight prompt. No Figma files or anything, no inspiration. So this is the prompt that I used, and the reason why I'm displaying it on the screen is because with every service that I tried out, I used the exact same prompt. So this is all in the browser, and it's pretty sweet because it gives you an interface with 3 tabs, and these tabs are right here. So in one interface, in one window that you can just switch between, you get the actual UI that you can use, and this is what it generated. You get the design tab, which is what I just showed you in VS Code, where you can edit the design with your mouse. And you get this code editor where you can work in the browser without even having to exit. And then from here, you also get this button. You can't read it, but it says create repo, and you can just link it to your GitHub, and it automatically creates a repo right there. You didn't even have to leave this window. So that is pretty sweet. I was pretty blown away by this. And something about Builder that I noticed is that it's tailored for use with organizations. So the organization with spaces for projects is a really big part of their, I guess, user experience. And it's kind of built for teams to share resources and all work together. So there's a design component to this that just a designer could use all alone. And I just showed you the coding component as well. And they could all be assigned to a particular space where they can work together without disrupting the organization's other projects. So in that way, Builder.io isn't really tailored towards that solopreneur necessarily. And it's one of the only ones that can allow you to edit code that you already have. So let me go, can I do this? With this? When you go, sorry, I did the same mistake twice. When you use the VS Code plugin, this is all generated from my own code. I didn't import this from Figma or anything like that. It just gives me a visual interface to use it. So if I have a long-running project that's already like years into the implementation, that doesn't actually stop me at all from using Builder, which is one of the biggest things, because one of the things that holds a lot of the other tools back is that it only generates the initial concept. And then it's just kind of like there in your lap, like here, now you can use it.
Is this running? So like on a local server, so like any like
Yes.
API requests, everything like that is all running?
Yes. So this is displaying a dev server. Actually, not this window, but when you click the interact screen, that's displaying the dev server. So that's using all of the environment variables that you have on your machine at the moment, and all of the live data that you have too. Yes.
Kind of like a hot reload workflow where.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So, one of the, let me scroll up here. Slideshow. So then Bolt.new, they're one of the other emerging competitors, and they have a lot of hype going on right now. They've been throwing, when I went to Config in San Francisco, they had this huge live event with a DJ and like no actual networking going on. It was just a pure hype event. They're also championing the world's biggest hackathon, which has been running for over a month, I think. And I think they've been granting free pro memberships. Is that right? Well, I think so. Just so that people can build apps with their platform and then show them off. So they're created by StackBlitz. They're a lot more opinionated, and they're opinionated in the form of these templates. So when you create an app, I didn't put that in there actually. When you create an app, you have options as buttons to simply integrate Stripe or integrate Supabase, just like that. So those are the partners that they've chosen to pair with just to get this part right. And they've also chosen to partner with another platform here, Anima, in order to do their Figma to code generation. So they seem to be a lot more involved in, I would call it the design to code / solopreneur type of ecosystem, because all of these tools are really just used to get apps running. So I tried to see the exact same thing, and it worked pretty well, but it's a little janky here. It actually got these parts that Builder didn't get, but it did kind of put them off to the side. So points, definitely, it looks pretty good. But I did notice that when you compare it to Builder, this had a lot shallower of a hierarchy with the components. So when you open this UI thing, which I can actually show you in a second, there's a lot of components, but then they're all put together on the exact same page. So it's a super long page component with a whole bunch of custom components, and that's it. It's just one layer. So I want to give Builder some points for having a lot more layering, which is really awesome. But it's still good that they're making the extra components too. And like I said, they used Anima under the hood.
Is that? Would you say it's fair to say that like Builder was capable of better abstracting use cases between different components so that you're like you have code reuse more often in Builder and the hierarchy gets deeper that way because like you're just not repeating yourself as much? Or is that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because essentially what Bolt did is that it essentially created a UI library for me.
Right.
And then it just used those little components. It used the very low level components.
Right.
But then with Builder, there was a little bit of that, and then it created the bigger components that made up my whole page.
Okay.
So it broke my calendar screen down into 2 components instead of it just being one gigantic page.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess in that sense, and I don't know how much more you edit things, right? But as you have like a big project, and you have atomic level components that build up into molecules, and you have like that WYSIWYG editor. When you were to change something, was it changing it at the reusable component, or was it like did it just add more complexity, more props to that reusable component, or did it just do that for that one instance, like add a wrapper around it? Like how did it manage that?
I actually didn't try that out. We could totally try it out right here though.
Yeah, because that's one of the problems that we have with a large system is designers tend to like add more stuff over time, and then you have these just massive, what was once just a basic button component with like 40 different props.
I see. That,
layer in local byte.
that is quite annoying, but let's try it out because I'm curious. So this is Figma, cursor. Let's shut this down. Let's open VS Code. I want to put this down because I can't see. There. Okay, so when we do this, when we open Builder, do it. Okay, here we are. So one example would be like, if we go to the file editor, we can see that, I'm really testing my eyesight here. Oh my goodness, I can't see. Okay, availability calendar, that's one. Components, UI, these are from ChadCN. So let's say, this is grouping a lot of things. It's just one massive component, actually. Oh, I'm sorry. I got this wrong, Justin. What I really meant to do was this. Here. Here. This is more like it. So let me put this up on the screen. Okay, so we have this, which is the code which is purely what it generated based on my Figma design. And if you go to code, okay, now we have these components that are put into the pages. Okay. So we have availability calendar and comment card. So let's go to interact. So we have this and this. So you're saying if we change the calendar, will it change the calendar or will it just make a one-off like
Yeah,
implementation?
So, and I don't know, maybe someone else here could like have their opinion on like how they would have broken down this, right? So maybe they would have broken this down into like much smaller components.
Right.
And so if you had like a calendar row, right, component, if you were to like say, hey, I want this calendar row component to like be highlighted for some reason,
Right.
would it be doing it at that component level? Because maybe that calendar row is used somewhere else.
I see.
Right? So like, that's sort of what I was just wondering is like, if it does build something abstracted or usable, is it always just going to continue adding complexity and more configuration to that single component?
In this case, I think it will, unless you tell it to do otherwise. And that's because while we do have slightly more of a hierarchy here, we still have, this is the Shetzian ones. These are still pretty massive.
Yeah.
They're still pretty huge. But I think if I tell it, can you please split the availability calendar?
Yeah, I had a quick question. So like, when you're giving prompts to like generate content, do you guys try to ahead of time like organize like some prompts like, oh, here's like a type file, and like, oh, here's like an example, like, you know, state management file I like to use? Or do you guys kind of just ask for general features, and then once you see the code, it's like, oh, can we have a Redux or like a state file that looks like this? It's like, oh, now, like, I'm just curious what order people usually go in when they're building, or if they have any preferences on how they like the prompt. Because I've tried to experiment, and I'm not really sure which ways are like the fastest or, you know, the easiest.
I typically just, like, my approach or understanding of how I'm trying to solve an application, my problem, if you're talking about like a config file or something like that, or the way different things are going to fit together, I still kind of take the solve it in my head approach on how I want to lay everything out, like the foundation of the house. And then after that, I'm doing specific prompts around this, like one problem I'm trying to solve. And then if it doesn't quite understand what I'm saying, if like it jumps back and forth on certain items and variables show up the wrong way with the prompt quality that I get back, I end up rewriting the code that I get as a result of that specific problem. Because it might not have the full context on it for, you know, I'm referencing this other component over here, or I'm bringing in this class that has to, you know, do the following things. So
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
That's actually more or less what I learned today too. While trying to use these specific tools, there's actually documentation on how to prompt. And they highly, highly, highly recommend iterative prompts. So you set a framework with just some routes and minimal UI. And then for this, I'd like this. And for this, I'd like this. And like for this, I like this. Although at the beginning, I at least just specify the state management library that I want to use.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I can get more specific.
Yeah, because I guess sometimes when I forget to mention something, like I forget to mention that my route files use Mongo, like you'll have to do one or two prompts to fix it, where it's like the first run, it might do it right. So it's like I feel like I'm guessing a lot of the time.
For sure, for sure.
But it's all good if, like, you know, it's not super expensive to use prompts.
New code and existing
Mind if I get this?
are like you have two different modes, right? So when you're building something brand new, like that's a very different mindset as opposed to I'm trying to add an additional feature to something that exists, right? So like we use Cursor, and Cursor has rules for every little bit. Like, so if we're gonna add in a new service, we'll say like, oh, we use, like when doing this, we use this type of state management, or you know, always like reference like types, like strongly type everything, so we don't do that, and then it looks for the types that are relevant to like what you're working with. So yeah, it just kind of depends on how you're planning to build stuff. But if you're starting from scratch, I'm particular, and I would actually define my directory structure ahead of time. and just like use like markdown tabs and like, you know, like little ticks, right?
Oh, cool.
And then say like, this is how I want it, and then create this thing here,
Nice.
right? And so yeah, I'm just more prescriptive because I have the larger vision in my head already, and like there'll be a plan for it.
So after running that last little request, it actually broke everything down into smaller components, but I don't think I would have done that unless I asked it. So it's still very guided. It's just like Cursor, but in the browser now. Cursor 2. So pick your poison, one way or the other. Yeah. Like pay for Cursor, or pay for Builder, or pay for something.
You should look up Dreamweaver or Microsoft Front Page when you have the time.
That's Adobe, right? Adobe websites?
Like
Yes.
early thousands.
Yeah. But it was
Yeah.
where we got the terms like WYSIWYG, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was just gonna say, like, to qualify my statements to you, and you can take it with a grain of salt, but like I'm.
My passes.
Okay.
No, it's really fast. It's hard to keep organic.
Yeah. So my background is primarily in .NET, going back to like the old NPC days in the 2010s, where you're like grunting through jQuery and Ajax for most of your front end.
Yeah.
You know, going all the way up to modern reactive frameworks like React or Blazor. And the biggest concern that I have a lot of the times in the back end is going to be that inversion of control problem, where you're doing dependency injection and making sure all your services are straight and that things are scoped correctly. So that's where I feel a little bit of the control freak nature to like not hand it over to AI to like decide where to put dividing lines and boundaries in the application. But that is a new development use case, like you had mentioned, that's not refactor or handling an existing code base that, you know, like some of that's already decided for you. And so you're making smaller incremental decisions on how to cut those things up and put
Yeah.
responsibilities for things in the right place.
Of all of these, Bolt's the only one that has actually decided something for you,
Yeah.
because they have something that's preset. But you bring up a pretty good point in that, like, the idea that I'm getting from what you were saying is that, like, even though AI can do all this,
Yeah.
it's probably still in your interest to just decide on a micro level.
Yeah.
So I see a big push from companies like this that want to give AI more and more power to build a whole app, but to build anything that's worth keeping, it seems that we need to stay at a smaller scope.
Right.
So is this productive? Like, is building for full app creation in a single prompt the way to go for the future?
Yeah, it's a valid question. There's going to be 100 different answers for 100 different people. I just, with what works for me and what I tend to and what I'm comfortable with, do that.
Think of it like cooking, right? Can you make me some eggs? Each of you are going to make eggs in a whole different way.
Yeah, which way?
Yeah.
Some of you may,
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
be like, this is how I make eggs, and I make the best eggs.
Yeah.
Some may like ask me, how do you prefer your eggs?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I said over easy, you may still do it over medium, right? Like,
For sure.
right, you put seasoning on it, like, etc. It's kind of like that, where there's a market for fast food, and there will be a market for high-end food with like really high quality ingredients, etc.
Yeah. So is this like fast food engineering?
This is a sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry. Do you know what a sorry is? Like in the Philippines, there's like a little store outside your house,
Uh-huh.
where like someone's just like cooking up whatever they have.
Oh, for sure.
This-
For sure.
this is sorry.
This is a sorry.
This is like pantry cooking? Yeah, okay.
Like, what do you have? Like, that's the thing.
Shoot. Okay. Oops. Sorry, Builder. Because I think they're really trying to go for that high-end space. They want to be used by really big companies. But I totally get that for things like Bolt. Oh, I'm giving the presentation to myself. Because Volt just seems to like really be angled towards a solopreneur that just wants to put something on the web to make money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you can launch it in a day, I guess that's the value to them and their partners, because they're getting used. Here. So using the existing code base, Bolt really wasn't too different, except that you don't have a visual editor. You can load up the code straight from your GitHub, fantastic, and it's exactly the same. You just don't have a design tab. You just have to code it yourself, or have the AI code it for you. And I think that's why it loads way quicker too. Something else that I noticed is that you can't import Figma designs after the initial build. So once you have the initial build on your hands, it's really just up to you and the AI to figure it out from there. So it's kind of like, I don't really see a future using this type of development. Whereas with Builder, there may very well be a future. It's very tightly integrated to your ongoing development process. There we go. And then from building from scratch, I used the exact same prompts. We got something very similar, but also what I was describing later, where it's a lot of atomic components and not a lot of depth. And we got this. It's not made for desktop, it's mobile first, which I thought was pretty interesting. Yeah. But also, I can't tell what's in these boxes. They're not really check boxes. I try clicking them. But yeah, just interesting. That's what it comes up with. So the last one I'm going to go over, like along this same vein, is Anima. I was running out of time when I made this, so I just put a little joke on there. And very similar, and the reason why it's so similar to Bolt is because Bolt uses this under the hood, which I think is a massive plus. Because to me it shows Bolt's not wasting time on worrying about this implementation. They're just partnering with somebody else, which is so awesome. Because I've seen like 8 different companies try to do the exact same thing, and it seems like we're all trying to do the same thing instead of like helping each other out. So really happy to see that they were actually using a partner. And as you can see, it's almost exactly the same. It loaded the interface almost exactly like the Figma, but with these top little tabs shifted over, just like with Bolt. So the relation is really, really apparent. And the code looks exactly the same too. Almost exactly the same. A little bit less tailwind. So weirdly enough about this, Anima allows for Figma imports while you're editing. Bolt doesn't do that. I don't know what type of business decision took place there. I don't know if it's because like the partnership isn't that deep, or one couldn't acquire the other, or what's going on. But just a quirky little detail.
I have a question.
What's up?
So I don't really understand the relation between Bolt and Anima. Like Bolt builds on top of Anima, but what does Bolt provide to Anima? And like, what do they get out of it?
What does Bolt get?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Bolt gets Anima, but like, what does Bolt provide to Anima? Does it?
Bolt provides the integrations with Supabase and Stripe,
Okay.
and you can launch easier from Bolt.
Okay.
Anima just generates the code for you pretty much.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and most of what Anima's providing is just the Figma to code, but they don't do the
Integration.
like the bot.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's mostly Bolt also. They didn't really specify that much, but that's my guess.
So is it fair to say that Bolt is running the same play that like you'd see from a Webflow or like a DigitalOcean, where there's kind of a not lock-in, hard lock-in, because all the source code is there, but the like ease of pipeline out of
Yes.
design, develop, and then host all in one
Yes.
vertical.
Absolutely. Because all these things are basically, they have these nice integrations, and the real add-on with these integrations isn't that they're there for you, it's that there's a lot of hard coding involved.
Yeah.
So there's just less bugs because the hard-coded template works.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can build and launch something way easier from Bolt than you could from Builder or with Anima.
Gotcha.
This one I didn't really get too far into, but they're one of the only ones that have a visual code editor as well. The only weird thing about these guys is that they don't have a free trial. You have to pay. So I just watched a demo and checked it out. And they have a pretty unique editor in that you can edit the code while you're using the visual editor. So yeah, pretty useful. I think it's pretty great. I don't think it's going over Builder because Builder has more of the cross-functional collaboration options. What's going on? But it's a good option anyways. And to switch the context, more or less, I want to introduce this as well. I don't know if many people know about this. It just came out in the last month. Figma has a model context protocol server, and it allows you to access your designs without even exporting them. All you have to do is set up the MCP server, which runs locally on your computer. So this is valid no matter what computer you're running it on. This is from my cursor. But you can paste it into yours and it would work very similarly as long as you have the MCP server running on your Figma desktop app. And once you do that, you can just include links to the components in your Figma file, in your cursor prompt, or your windsurf prompt, or even Claude. And then it knows what you're referencing exactly, and it can use it to produce a response. And then if we want to go even further here, Figma also has a code connect feature where you can change your code and it will change the Figma file, which is crazy. But that's not going in the full app context. That's only for design systems. So if you're making a custom component library for your company, that's what it's for. Not really for building a whole app and then having it reflected. That would be overpowered. But I'm sure we're getting there. I think that's going to blow a lot of this out of the water. So I just wanted to show you a lot of this to give you a lot of context so that we can discuss about what this means for us, pretty much. So I prepared this last slide with some 3 really important questions. Are you actually going to use this? Does anyone think they're actually going to?
Yeah, I had a question because I tried using some of the NPC stuff, except it wasn't for Figma specifically, it was with Unity because I wanted to try to make a game and found that an NPC existed, so it actually controlled Unity. But when I gave it a pretty general prompt, it wasn't like creating the assets in the right way. And my reasoning for it was like they have so much, firepower at like Claude and those companies to hire people who can like develop these really robust systems that like handle general language and make it into code. So I'm not, I'm trying to figure out, I guess, how we can make that work for MCPs too, just for ourselves, adding stuff to it. So you mentioned you used the Figma MCP. I was wondering if it was able to do most of the stuff for you that you tried out when you were experimenting.
What do you mean by do most of the stuff?
Like if you're using an edit and you give it instructions, like if you were general, did it do what you thought it would do? If you were really specific, did it do exactly what you were expecting? Like, I'm just curious, like, out of the use cases you had, if it worked out.
So unfortunately, this is one of these things that I just wasn't able to test.
Yeah, no worries.
And the reason why is because Figma files can be structured in a very similar way to actual code, where you can create a real component. And then within that component, you can have variables, very similar to how you have variables in a React function that are then injected into the JSX below. So by structuring your design with components and organizing it really well, it can then take that and apply it here. So when I was testing this out, I thought, oh crap, I gotta take my design and just make it really, really good. But no, my design was a mess. So unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to try it out right away.
Right, but no, thanks for sharing that. Because
absolutely.
When I've done Figma, I've seen the pro designers make it with all the components, but that's not how I use it. I'm not making all those detailed layouts and stuff. Like, you just were talking about. So I'm kind of more like that too.
For sure. I noticed that due to that, this actually doesn't really help us out when we're working alone a lot of times, because it takes a full designer to make the full design in a way that's really organized to translate into code really well.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed.
On the MCP specifically, consider that there's probably at this point 10 Figma MCP servers that are set up, right? And each one can expose certain functions. And so what we do at work, for example, is we have a bunch of MCP servers built and set up And what we'll do is your code base, whatever repo you pull down, we'll have them all pre-configured for you. And then you just store like an API key locally, right? And then once you store that, you now have access to the MCP server. And we can also control what functions we expose. And because Model Context Protocol is a discoverable protocol, you don't need to know what functions are available. You can just ask. So for your specific Unity one, you might need a different MCP server for Unity built by someone else, or you can actually build it yourself and expose the types of functions that you want. But for example, like at work, we may not want someone like someone to do destructive actions. So we may not let you delete a repo, right? Through the GitHub MCP, right? But we're okay with you writing to it and reading, right? But we just won't expose the delete, right? So yeah, you can really just control what type of things you expose through MCP.
Okay, and then I guess, because I'm just trying to learn as much about MCP as I can, like, do you ever have to provide some sort of intermediary between like the prompt to the MCP? So, you know, in the case of SNK, can you make a character for me in Unity? Do you have the intermediary like reformat that request like with some sort of like logic, like RAG or something, so it gives back better results? Because that seems like an opportunity.
Yeah, so Unity is very unique, right? And it's also like to ask to make a character is a very complex thing.
For sure.
Right? And so maybe you would have a function that says it accepts a character, right? And then you can modify some of like the attributes of that character, right? Like make it bigger or smaller, right? So like it's just more of like how you construct the MCP server to interact, right? Because like maybe you just don't have that functionality in it. So in your MCP server, I would just ask, what can you do? And it'll list off all the functionality it can do. And you'll know immediately whether or not that's available.
Okay, no, I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Very cool. It makes me think of adding presets to the MCP. Like if you provided it your own assets, character models, things like that. But then you're just doing work. Yeah.
Yeah. But like that's the thing is like some of this stuff like all of it coming together is like it's like orchestration, right? And that's why like you want it would be great if Bolt or Builder was like really great for like the individual person, but the moment you start to add more cooks in the kitchen, you just need more guardrails, right? Because it's like there's more people producing things, and in a code base you kind of want it to look like it was coded by one person. The same way like designs, it should be look like it was designed by one person, right? Everything's named accordingly, it's all using the right variables, right formats. So yeah, it's just the problem, like all the bad behavior gets amplified in a team setting.
I can see that here. And now that we're blending the design and the programming as well, it kind of seems like the problem is, amplifying, like you said. Because now if someone designs something that's out of the ordinary, it will also result in more code that is out of the ordinary, that's coded in an unusual way. So that's messing up is easier than it's ever been, just like producing code.
It's valuable for like anyone who is trying to just get an idea out there.
For sure.
And just like get validation that like this thing sort of makes sense. But just imagine like it's getting cheaper to build this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And most things don't need to be built for scale. Right? It's only when you experience a scale, you'll likely have the money to build for scale too.
Right.
And that's like kind of one of those things where it's like, do you need to build it like that immediately? Maybe you don't.
Cool. So this is useful for starting out.
Yeah.
In a way.
For like a very like simple idea.
like the term I've used in the past is like wet paint demo.
Wet.
A wet paint demo.
Okay.
Yeah. Where like you're just doing a proof of concept to get something in place. Like I've messed around with tools like Replit too. I've had limited success with those.
What are those?
Replit.
Right. I've used the interface, but it's just for REPLs.
It's terrible if you're trying to do like a basic exploration of application that you want to, like a CRUD app, let's say, something really
Right.
basic that if I was to go back to your earlier example, let's say with the calendar app and say, I don't want to have a calendar that explores just my availability. I want to look at the availability of n number of people, right? And do
Right.
some sort of like backtracking or, Roman gate kind of approach where you're trying to find optimal windows of availability between a team. If your primary concern is for UI, I think these are going to be a cool addition to the workflow. If you have other concerns for the quality of the code it produces for handling those kind of requests or what's going on. I brought up Replit as a for instance of that because I just had one of those kind of off-path things I was going to go and explore. Like, let's say I asked Replit to build a clone of Scratch, like one of those logical programming interface kind of situations,
Yeah.
like Lego block, put these things together,
Right.
no code kind of thing. It would throw all of the Tailwind and everything else in there with a kind of flat directory structure in the example project. It spat back at me, but a use drag event wouldn't work. Like at all. So you couldn't drag the tiles around. And so you know that you're going to have this code, this line by line level of responsibility for what's going to come out of that to begin with. So I throw it out there as kind of like, it's almost like if you were going to be in dialogue with somebody about an idea, or you're going to like whiteboard something out, you're using the AI to whiteboard it and say, I like the way this works, or I don't like the way this works. And so I have to go back and absent any initial ideas of my own or just sanity testing the idea, I'm going to go back and take what it gave me and then use that as a launching point to go and build it the rest of the way with the code.
Do you think we're going to escape that anytime soon? Where this can provide line-by-line perfection?
Like, humans don't do that. So, it's,
True.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it's an error minimization game trying to fit against what the nature of the prompt is or what you're doing. And the more precise you get with your prompting, the more it's almost like actual coding to begin with. You know, with the
totally.
sequential thinking and like
Totally.
it's like syllogistic logic. We're all going to be philosophers before we're coders because
No, definitely. And this prompt, the one that I pasted on the PowerPoint, I made that with ChatGPT too.
Yeah.
I mean, ironically.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, it's so structured anyways. And part of me wants to say, like, I wish there was a regular way to make this so that I could specify exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
Like, why not make a JSON prompt?
Yeah.
And then I'm just making JSON.
Well, I've asked ChatGPT.
I could have asked for, no, I mean, like, I wish I could put in JSON into the prompt.
Like as
to
instructions.
to do it myself.
Yeah.
But I suppose I could also ask for JSON.
Yeah.
While trying to come up with it.
And I think the like another practical example that's actually adjacent to your thing was like it was working in 3JS, just like website 3D rendering kind of circumstance where it's procedural generation. It's a pretty well worn example of something where you're doing like terrain generation or topography type stuff, and the well worn case for that, the path for that, when you start getting into levels of detail and dynamically re-rendering that at various levels, you have to worry about poly counts and managing memory and stuff in a browser. It's not like it's not a big sandbox to play in. The well-worn path is just flat space, not a spherical space when you're doing projections and translating back and forth between polar and Cartesian coordinate systems for that. I vibe coded a lot of my opening answer to that problem, and the thing that it just would not let out of its teeth was, I know it was pulling from like 3 specific forum posts in like Unity 3D or some of these other 3JS documentation.
Interesting.
And it would start like hallucinating. You could hear it arguing with itself about the way it named variables, about its inability from prompt to persist the idea of I'm at this point in the process, so I'm using polar. Now I'm at this point in the process, and I'm using Cartesian.
Oh.
And so the algorithm that you're using to produce the terrain couldn't keep a consistent frame of reference on the actual like mathematical frame of reference that you're running coordinates in, and the naming convention between variables. And if you use something like Grok, where you ask it to include a link, like cite your source.
It sounds like it's running out of memory, actually.
Yeah, like it's
Because
just
it's
like
just
hitting
doing
a
what's
hard
convenient
stop.
for the situations.
Yeah, it's just like in a little bit of a death loop. And so for those kind of circumstances, when I see people do a 30-second YouTube short that says, you know, like, I built this calculator app so quickly, like coding is dead, AI, long may she reign, and I'm like, how many calculator apps are you bringing to market? Because
For sure.
yeah, it's,
I wanted to bring up one personal experience just with the AI having trouble. Was when like I was having it code like a web form to fill out information. It worked fine, but when I wanted to translate that web form into like a browser I could see and view, there were a lot of security concerns with that because they don't want people to actually, or they don't want to have a website control someone's browser. So it's like you can ask these super general questions to solve things. Oh, sorry about that.
no, it's all, I think we're just
Yeah, so you could, have it solve really general things. A lot of people have done like forms, but when you ask it to do like those more niche things that aren't seen as frequently, they'll have less sample cases of data to work with, so it's just going to fail and not really know. But then like when you ask something like Notebook LLM to try to generate those sources and test it to make a prompt, it can sometimes have a better result. But I think just because we're trying to be creative and do things that are new, it's not going to be able to solve those things because it's not going to have a lot of examples to work off of.
I've thought of this quite a bit, actually. So now that we're getting the opportunity to make so many new things, I think the need to make things that are wholly new is becoming actually a lot more prevalent. And then we run into that exact problem. So are things like this just going to not work after a certain point, and they're only good for making a calculator app on YouTube? You think so?
To ship a product, like a real product, there's so much that's involved, and I don't think the average person understands what it takes to take something to market.
Yeah.
Right? What it takes to actually have your software be supported.
Yeah.
How to have customer support, how to have refund workflows and retries, and I think like that's the stuff that like a software engineer is like dealing with, right? Is like
That's right.
all of those little things, and so
Not open source software.
oh no, sure, not open source software, but like in order to take something to market, it involves a lot of different things and a lot of different people coming in to make it happen. And so something like Bolt, what they did was they said, we're going to give you a payment processor. We're going to give you Stripe. We're going to give you Supabase, like a basic database access. To have something real, you need more systems in place. So to answer your question, like who has the most to gain and lose? Everyone is building this right now. So the Webflows of the world that like actually had a huge market share in the website builder space, they're going to roll out their version of this, and it's going to be so much better than what Bolt or anything can do, because they also have all of these sites, right? Like Shopify has some of the most traffic in the world. They're rolling this out also, and they'll just be able to do so much more, especially because they already have the integrations and they have the deployment, right? And they have some light database abstractions, so like the average user doesn't actually have to think about normalizing data or anything like that.
Yeah.
So those are the ones who are gonna have like the most opportunity, and the Bolts of the world, they will be probably acquired by someone who just wants this functionality. So it's kind of like they're building it to sell it almost, right?
I see that.
There's no other reason why, just because they're still far behind in the market.
So it seems like, as with most businesses in all of human history, it's kind of whoever has the most market share will win.
That
type of situation.
Like execution, right? So like you should look at V0 by Vercel.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, Vercel is primed. They're very opinionated because they're what is it?
They're like an all-in-one source.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
it's like Netlify, but very specific with I want to say like Next.js.
Right.
I'm pretty sure like the Next.js team became Vercel.
Yeah.
So yeah, but V0 is going to be like really great for this because you can deploy directly.
Right. And they already have users.
Yes.
Okay, so the users are the key to this. It's not like they're introducing something groundbreaking, it's going to get everyone to migrate.
Yeah. These are built for just non-technical people.
So these are probably going to get snatched up by the bigger platforms. And I've seen Figma already having that sort of mentality with the new services that they're providing, because they've got a pretty big user base, and now they're adding stuff like Figma Make, which can just deploy a website all for you, and they already have people using the platform, so now those people can just make the website.
And suing people for using the word edit mode out loud.
Oh, what was that?
And suing people for using the word edit mode out loud.
Oh, is that real?
Yeah, there was another company that had an edit mode thing, and I think it was trademarked by Figma, or the company owned Figma, and so they started coming out with the word.
Wow.
It's ironic now. Those now they're copying Lovable and exactly everything like with their site because they have their new mode Make, which is the exact same. So.
Oh, shucks.
So like you should like a lot of these things like you're looking at like business development, PLG movement, so product-led growth. How can you again like kind of build that moat around your products? Because like one of the things that we're seeing in the market at probably like anywhere from like a mid-market and up company, so 500 employees or more, they're stuck in a mode where they don't know if they should build the solution themselves or if they should buy a solution. Because now you can build things so much quicker, and anything that's coming on the market is very, it's young, right? It's not mature. And so because there's such an influx of new products, you don't know, are you getting the best deal? Is what you're paying for at this price going to make sense? And if you're going to move 500 employees onto a system, like how long is that system going to live for, right? And so now, like I see this at our company where it's just like a bunch of people are now building things that we would have normally paid for in the past, and it's all crap.
Are you saying they're building stuff they would have paid for because they don't trust the paid services to last?
Yeah, like if we had like services today to like, I don't know, like let's say GitHub metrics, I want to measure the team's productivity. That per developer is probably like $35 with like an enterprise plan of like $10,000 per month, right? And you have 500 developers on that, it starts to get expensive. And now we're just like, well, why don't we build it ourselves, right? But now you're taking developer time building something that you could technically pay for, right? And you're not building for your customers, okay? And so like there's this push and pull of like, should we build or should we buy? And that question is bigger than ever in today's market because there's an influx of new products coming that do half of what you need it to do.
I see. I mean, ironically, if there is such an issue with supplying the right solutions, these can help create some new solutions.
Yeah, but you're splitting hairs, and now it's about marketing, right? It's not like, again, like the Bolt versus Builder versus V0 versus like all of the others, like which one are you going to use? And if you're going to spend time adopting something, now that implementation time is expensive to find out that it may not do what you need it to do.
Yeah, I see that a lot. And when I was exploring these, that was one of the things that was really on my mind, because it seems that Builder is optimizing for adoption by a certain type of client, and Bolt is optimizing for adoption from a different type of client. And what we're talking about when it comes to market share and adoption and things like that, like that's valid because once you have a product in someone's hands, when you change the product, now you have a whole bunch of new customers that you already had, but like for a new service, and that's great. But then also, where was I going with this? That also, the optimizing for a particular type of audience seems pretty important, because if that company is deciding like to go for a certain product that might not fit, if they find one that fits, they should get that. Oh my god, I got so disorganized. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because if they make something that's going to take a lot of time, if they pay for something, it might die, especially if it only does half of what you need. But if it's the right fit, then it could work. That's why I have a lot of faith in Builder in particular. So could that cement it? Could that make it long lasting?
A lot of times, like, if they have a good logo, is what we'll call it, like a good customer that adopts them, their product team is going to be reaching out for product feedback and saying, like, what do we need to build for you guys to like adopt it more, right?
Okay.
That's going to be like even like a customer success team, right? They're trying to figure out like how do we go more into this market of like these types of customers, like this segment, right? And that's where you're like, again, like you start kind of like building for your customers and maybe like getting away from like the vision of what the product team originally had. But,
right.
Like, yeah, like you have to build for customers and what they need, and you have to really know that product, or like really like that segment of the market and what use cases they have and how they use it, because that's how you get more adoption.
Right. So if they played their cards right, I could see this being a big part of the future. However, as you mentioned, a lot of them could get snatched up, and this could just pass over like a wave.
Yeah.
Is everyone stoked about it, or is everyone kind of meh about it?
I just looked up what Figma does, and I'm actually pretty interested. I'm trying to get into web design, so this would actually be a pretty cool tool for me.
Nice. Optimism.
Honestly, after I found out what Figma did, I was like, man, I should have showed up earlier.
Oh shoot. Well, I can put the presentation online, you can see it.
Oh, that's
Or you can just talk to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, and there's also the video too. Probably watch it.
Oh yeah, that too.
It'll be on YouTube.
It's gonna be on YouTube. Yeah, right. Exactly, awesome.
I heard that these tools were pretty desirable at like the startup weekend type events, because it lets people pivot fast. So like if they have one idea they want to test out, they can easily pivot to a new idea just because the development time is faster. So I think it's great that these tools can be used by people like that, you know, when
Great.
they're trying to just prove their concepts like with an MVP.
That's a pretty big market too.
Yeah, a nice thing to have.
Yeah. And with funding, that could also be pretty lucrative.
Yeah.
Yes. Very cool. Who here is probably going to hand code their next project?
Say that again?
Who here is probably going to hand code their next project? Like anyways, like despite this whole thing. Yeah?
Definitely parts.
I might start that way. And actually, shucks, it's pretty likely.
Cursor.
I use Cursor, yeah. Why deal with it? You know, Cursor with the Figma MCP might be the real ticket. Yeah. Well, that was our time. Thank you for coming. Absolutely.
I came late to the meeting, but what tools do you guys love to use here? Like bottom line, you have found?
One more time?
Which tools with vibe coding tools you use? Cursor and Figma MCP, you said?
Personally right now, I use Cursor and Figma when I do need to design something, and I just switched out of, yeah, I'm just gonna say Figma and Cursor.
My thing I want to share with you guys is I just got back from Asia. Asia is like so hardcore on this tool, right? And so you're not really, right now, as engineers or startups, you're not really fighting against the US market, but you have the global markets to compete against, because even kids in third world countries now have access to super intelligence that everybody does. So now, if you're doing a startup, your only chance to win is getting eyeballs, distribution, and users on board, and market fit. And so, in order to win in this AI space, you have to execute fast and collaborate with other companies if you can. Right? If you do it at alone, like for example, this is 9 months ago. I talked to some guys in Silicon Valley. This is 9 months ago. And sometimes I call them, they talk to me, it's like, hey, what are you guys up to? They said, you know what, we're working at a startup. It's it's a stealth company, and you input any URL, the AI, thousands of AI bots goes into maps everything about the business model, right? And we took it, we tried to replicate a business that took us 2 years to develop, and the AI developed it in a week and a half.
Oh, nice.
And this is 9 months ago. And so when I told him, so you're building a company that's going to eliminate your jobs? He said, yes. And then so he's like, what company is that? I'm interested in investing. He said, no, this is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that they have stealth. And so this is what's coming to play. So everybody will have access to code now will become commoditized. Of course, that 5% or 10% is the strategy and engineering and maybe potential moat. But the moat is going to be difficult to gauge now because AI will pretty much understand. Once you launch and you're public, it will understand where you're going after the moat. So there's no really moat anymore in terms of technology later on. I'm not an engineer. I'm more from the executive side. And so I just want to share with you guys what's coming down the pipeline, what we're realizing. And a lot of guys from Perplexity CEO, NVIDIA, this is not. Coding is going to be commoditized. How your strategy, how you go to market fit, how you get customers is what you should hone in your skill set now, right? Not if you're good, if you're an engineer, great, but
Nice.
that is not the way to win now anymore. You have the global markets that can compete against you once you launch and do better with AI. And in countries like European where they have GDPR, they have limitations, they're going to lose big time, right? Because China don't have limitations. North Korea, Russians don't have limitations, right? They can go walls out, and hack the system, hack your code, do all sorts of stuff now with AI. And so that's why you're competing against the world.
What was that word you were using? Molt? Molt? Moat.
So when investors ask you, when you pitch their idea to investors, they'll ask you, what's your moat? It's not like a castle.
Right.
What's your moat? What's your competitive advantage? What's your IP? What's your unique selling?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, keep competitors out.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, if you don't have that, a long time ago, if you don't have that, they may not invest in your company.
Of course.
But now, when you hear that, it's if they ask you what's your competitive moat, it's either your strategy, your distribution. The tech now is you still have it for the time being, but technologies, guys like myself who understands what's coming down the pipeline.
I see.
The moat is not the technology anymore.
No, because someone can just replicate it so easy.
Yeah, replicate it. So for us, we're building a venture studio, right? We're building a venture studio because we understand that collaboration between companies is the way to win growth.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's not like, oh, you're gonna launch and focus on one project and try to, be a samurai sword and focus. You can't now. You have to be collaborative, with other companies.
Yeah, this meetup is just for fun now.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting perspective, and I think it's very necessary. I feel like we talked a lot more about business, or about the same with business as with engineering.
Yeah, as soon as we stray off into what's the longevity of these solutions and where do you think they're going in terms of
Right.
getting acquired or being their own standalone solution. Another, not to again completely throw wrenches in the works, but there was a situation with Copilot going sources of the same line of conversation. Sorry. Is there an actual microphone in here?
There is a real microphone in there.
Okay, cool.
Yes, it's just listening, not amplifying.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Are we still going? Is there a? I thought we were up against the time.
We got
we're just
2
fun at
minutes
this
on the
point.
books.
Okay. Well,
Technically, I was just ending it and just opening it up to just us hanging out.
Yeah. Well, if there's closing statements or stuff that anyone else wants to say, I'll pass them.
I don't believe so. All I'll say is thanks for being here, and you don't have to go. Just feel free to hang out. Absolutely. All right, everybody. I'm just gonna shut it down here. Thanks for being here. Thank you.